Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author, and your happy hour host, Anne-Marie Kelly. Each week, Anne-Marie chats with women who have reinvented, started over, or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
All of my friends tell me that I'm the good girl, yes they do. They all see me as being so perfect, little Miss Goody Two Shoes. If I do something a little risque, they all gasp and I just say, good girl.
Hi and welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Anne-Marie Kelly, and you know me, I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner, and this is where us victory chicks and you guys who love us meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to make our lives better and more fulfilling and give us a little more jazz and sparkle. And I'm so glad you came to Happy Hour today. And can you believe that we're at the end of summer? I hope yours was a good one. And I'm wondering, if you gardened this summer, I hope your crop of tomatoes and basil were as good as mine. You know, last night I put a couple rolls in the oven. Do you know those ones that they're the half-baked ones you get from Trader Joe's? I love those because they're in the oven for just about 10 minutes. And when they're done, they taste like fresh-baked bread. Well, that's except when you leave them in too long, which is what I did last night. I put a couple rolls in, and then I remembered that I forgot to send somebody an email. So thinking it would only take a few minutes, I ran up to my office to do the email. But it took longer than I expected, and don't they all? And when I took the rolls out, they were almost burnt. The outsides were so hard that I had to pound on them to see what was inside. But when I did, the insides were soft and perfect. So do you think I threw those rolls out? Good Catholic girl that I am, of course not. I remembered from my 4th grade school teacher days that the Swiss created fondue because, through a winter, the cheese they made in the fall became too hard to cut. So they melted it and dipped their bread. And last night, that's what I did. I made an awesome, truly awesome, in that good sense of the word, tomato and basil salad with tomatoes and fresh basil from my garden, and olive oil, and of course, tons of garlic. I'm Italian, remember? And we add garlic to almost everything. And I cut those rolls into bite-sized pieces and let them soak up the fabulous juice of the salad. And it was summertime perfect. But I think tomato season is almost over for this year, and they're selling spice wafers in Giant, back-to-school supplies at Target, and advertising generators at Home Depot, all harbingers of the end and the new fall to come. It's so hard when we have to say goodbye to summer, isn't it? But all is not lost. With the new season comes new things, and I'm sharing one of them with you today. How many of you know the Hedgerow Theater in Rose Valley? Those of you from Delaware County know it's about 5 minutes from the heart of media, and it's an institution. Well, with us today is Penelope Reed, Hedgerow's Director Emeritus, and Jane A. McNeil, Hedgerow's playwright in residence, whose first play is being performed at Hedgerow starting on September 14th. I thought you'd find both of them fascinating, so I'm going to first introduce you to Penelope, and she's the woman who has been the guiding force for Hedgerow for many years. Penelope Reed. Welcome, Penelope.
It's wonderful to be here.
I'm glad you are. How long have you been at Hedgerow?
Well, it's a great question because 60-some years ago, my father died, and a month later I started studying with the founder, Jasper Dieter. It was my senior year in high school, and he got me through. And Jasper Dieter was renowned as starting the first repertory theater in the country. He'd left New York. He didn't like the commercialism of New York, and he wanted to grow a company. And because of the year 1923, he was able to do it in the arts and crafts community known as Rose Valley, and it continues today. And so we're 95 years old, Now,
You were not 95 years old.
No, Hedgerow. But once you work there, running it for 27 years, you do feel like you're part of the rocks and the mortar.
bet.
And
I
then
can
my
understand
mother ran it for many years, and then when it burned to its stone walls in 1985, they
And
asked.
it was an old grist mill, right?
It's an old grist mill where they would grind grain, and then it made little boxes, and then it became a bobbin factory for the old mill in Rose Valley. And then when that burned down, that cotton factory, they didn't need bobbins, and so the whole village became abandoned for 20 years. And then the famous architect Will Price came in and his 4 architect siblings, and they started Rose Valley. Its sister town is Arden
Oh, I know, in Delaware.
And as opposed to Arden, which was all about everybody owning the property together, Rose Valley was about artists and craftsmen, where the rich and poor lived together in beauty. That was his inspiration. So when you go there, they had planted trees. It was farmland, 80 acres of farmland. But when you go there, you see all these buildings that look like Snow White would pop out at any moment.
That's really true.
And so it's great. And we think, according to Nancy Webster, that the first stop north of the Mason-Dixon line was where the freedom seekers came, and Harriet Tubman is supposedly walked that road right in front of Hedgerow Theater. So we're really excited about the history, the native population that traded with the Philadelphians, the Quakers, and then, of course, the Rose Valley leaders. So Jasper Dieter, the founder, left New York, saw his sister playing Caddishaw in the Mikado, and said, "This is where I want to build my theater." And it was famous for its time. And in 1929, during the Depression, all these actors from all over the country came as a magnet.
Oh,
the same way
interesting.
people came as a magnet for Will Price to that theater. So when they asked me to try to save it, it had burned down to its stone walls, and there was my mother, all this legacy would have gone away.
Wow.
So I had to say yes. So we commuted 7 years from the Lawrenceville School where I taught.
In New Jersey?
In New
No.
Jersey.
Oh, my goodness.
My husband is amazing. He's the hero because he would drive and we'd come. And I juggled both jobs until it got so positive and we had to come back to Hedgerow. But one of my great 13-year experiences was at the Lawrenceville School.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
interesting.
wonderful.
Yeah, you've been in a couple of other places before you came to Hedgerow.
Yes, I was right after college. I went to Carnegie. Right after college, I went to Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival and then became a leading member of the company at the Milwaukee Rep. And because I've heard you of Recovering Good Girls.
Oh, yes.
Well, my grandmother was a teacher, so I knew I had to be a teacher, but I was also an actor on my father's side, 4th generation. So I've always been an actor who teaches or a teacher who acts. So it's in my DNA. you know what I mean?
I believe that.
So I have to be a good girl to both sides.
Yes, and you're 4th generation
On the
acting
father's
family,
side.
and you're married to him. And Penelope, I have seen him perform. He's amazing.
Well, you have to know he didn't act before he met me.
Seriously?
Yes.
And he does.
He's wonderful. He's a natural.
dialects and not dialects.
That's true.
Yeah, okay.
Dialects, different characters.
Yeah.
He saw me at the Milwaukee Rep Theater, and I was his favorite. And so years later, I was living at the Alverno College I was teaching drama there. I lived under 5 nuns
Oh,
in
my
an
goodness.
all-women's college.
Oh, that is really good girl stuff.
It is. But they were great. They were St. Francis nuns.
Oh, yeah.
So they were all about serving the people. And they started the competency-based learning instead of just content. So they also started offering school on the weekend for women who would fly in from all over the country to get their degrees. So it was a magnificent time for me. And then we went with Zoran to the McCarter Theater, where I was there for 6 years, and with 2 boys who were able to get free education at the Lawrenceville School. So then I went there. But I always either acted in lots of different things.
And one of those boys,
yes,
is following in the tradition.
Jared is the 5th generation theater person, and he now is running the place, and that's why I'm a director emeritus and loving it.
So Zoran had a job in Lawrenceville, and you were teaching and then you were also doing Hedgerow at the same time?
Yes, Zoran had a job in Princeton and in real estate. So he discovered acting. People discovered how he was a natural. McCarter, my first play was Night of the Iguana. So I was just telling Jane that I had a Broadway leading actress playing Maxine and a California emergency leading man playing Shannon, and I played Hannah. And I'm the Midwest actress coming in. And I just said, okay, my job is to get my grandfather in the play, safety. And that helped me not be so nervous.
Oh, how about that?
And Zoran was asked 2 weeks later, now this is my groom who'd never acted ever, if he would play the role of the German in it, because the man playing it, Carl Light, who had been a Broadway actor, had fallen to pneumonia for a couple weeks. Zoran went on.
Oh,
I was
so
the
he started as a
bride.
fill-in.
Absolutely. And he knew German. So it was amazing. And I was terrified. Here's the young bride with her groom who's never acted on a major repertory theater, and he's speaking German, and he could fit the costume of the man. That's why he's a fill-in.
Oh, neat.
And he was wonderful. And he said, what? Gave me any pointers? And he always says, I said, just do it. And he tells people that was the line that helps him.
That's funny.
Just
do it. That's really good history, Penelope. I like it.
Thank you.
So how many shows does Hedgerow do each year?
Well, in order to keep the doors open on a small grist mill theater, you have to do lots because it only seats 132. So we do, right now, 5 to 6 main stage shows that run 5 to 6 weeks. Then we run children's full stage mounted productions in between, plus a thing Jared has brought in, a thing called story time, where you take a great story and the actors read it so that the audience feels like those old radio plays. And we have a following for that.
Oh, that's fun.
And so it's wonderful to see your son take what Jasper Dieter, the founder, taught me all about company being most important and ensemble, than me trying to keep the doors open and get the theater back, and then seeing his treatment of company. So the same idea has come through, and then the honor of new plays. New plays were always part of the pattern, the offering of Hedgerow, connected with the classics. So for the audience and the actors, they play together. So we have a devoted audience, and then we get to do new plays, at least once a year in our children's theater, often, and then we let the children sometimes write them themselves.
And I want to be talking about, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, Pen, but right now we need to take a break. So everybody stay close. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Anne Marie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm here with Penelope Reed from Hedgerow Theater. And Penelope, we were talking about how many shows you have. And I went to see Chekhov's Uncle Vanya this past year. I'm not a big Chekhov fan. But you did something that flipped a switch for me. Before the play, you did a whole seminar on Chekhov.
Yes.
Which, because I'm a backstory kind of Victory Czech, I found it so intriguing. How often do you do that with a play?
It depends. It depends if we deal with a great piece of literature that is kind of foreign to people, like Uncle Vanya. We all theater people think, oh, you're doing Chekhov, but not everybody knows. And depending on the translation or adaptation, it can be really boring. So first the director has to, or the artistic director, in this case Jared, had to pick an accessible piece. But then they asked me to do my talk, and I get so involved with how a playwright is really writing from his or her
You do.
heart.
I saw that. I saw that when we went to the Chekhov that little seminar. It was fabulous.
Oh, that's great. We did a similar thing with American Tragedy. Jasper Dieter, Theodore Dreiser, and Wharton Eschrick, who comes from Hedgerow. Paoli's Wharton Eschrick,
Right.
who's the pioneer of studio furniture. He discovered his calling in woodwork at Rose Valley while he was doing sets for Jasper Dieter.
Oh, interesting.
So he was a oil painter, and he did frames, and he saw the artwork of the Rose Valley woodworkers, and he says, I have tools, I can do that. So you had Theodore Dreiser, Wharton Eschrick, and Jasper Dieter for American Tragedy in 1935. So Louis Lipa and I were asked to create a new adaptation, and University of Pennsylvania, the Eschrick Studio, and Van Pelt Rare Books Library all came together. Huge symposium. It was so fabulous, and I got to do little talks about it ahead of the show. And Dreiser was amazing with his treatment, really, which would connect with women today, how women are treated, and the guy's really bad. And this was what it was exposing.
So you do the plays, and you do the little seminars before, and you also give classes. You give classes for adults and children. And Penelope, when we went to the fundraiser, that was like your retirement, wasn't it? Like from
yes,
your
was.
shift. It was like,
I call it rewiring.
There you
instead
go.
of retire.
I like that, Victory Chicks. I like the rewiring
I came
part.
up with that.
So, but when the kids came out to do a performance, and I was sitting close enough to the stage that I could watch them, and the love that they had for you was just touching. Everybody was so excited to see you, and when you like everything that happened in the process of that, they were so excited, and it seemed to me that they were so excited to be able to perform for you, and they were really beautiful.
Well, it's mutual love, and one of the things I love doing, I've always loved doing, is each person is individual. So you're trying to draw out them and their feelings about art. So they feel really nurtured, and I get nurtured by nurturing them. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So how often do you do that? What kind of I guess, what do you teach when you have adults come in, and you have a class that's starting just next month, I think, the end of September? Is it the end of for adults?
After Dishman Springs.
Yes.
I would put all my energy on Jane's play.
Yeah, that's good.
So with adults, again, I start out, what do you want? Why are you taking this class? So I feel that desire helps me choose how I want to teach. And to get people feeling it's not showing off, it's coming from within. And when you're doing acting as opposed to playwriting, you want to take those words of the playwright and see where they connect with you, and then where they're a little different, where you have to change your perception. And what I love about acting and different characters, they teach me things, because we can always view life from our own perspective, but when you're acting in a character, they think differently than you. So I always like to say, what do my ladies have to teach me now? And so that's also what I train. And the joy is teaching the young.
As a former school teacher, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And we've recently, a year ago, worked a whole year, and Jane was part of that, on the Odyssey. The children wrote their own adaptation of the Odyssey. And it was just so exciting to see all these different children working together, crafting this. And Jane and I guided them. And it was a joy.
I could understand that. That must have been something neat. Yes. So, Penelope, now that you're the director emeritus, I want you to talk a little bit about the thing that a lot of us are going through. We're in there's that midlife shift, and we're having to let go of stuff. And you let go after 27 years at Hedgerow. You let go of the day-to-day reins. And granted, you let them go to your son, and you can oversee what's going on. But how hard was that?
Oh, it's terribly hard. It's terribly hard because it's your baby. You have, he's your baby and it's your baby. So I really didn't just.
Oh, and you want to make sure the kids don't fight, huh?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And if you've spent all this time investing your heart and energy in a place and all the lovely people that are in it, and also you want to protect the person coming after, especially if he's your son, from mistakes maybe you've made or lessons you've learned. Sometimes you advise too much. So it was difficult, but to his credit, we hung in there. And I knew that I didn't want to do administration the rest of my life. So partly this was a real choice. And there were 3 young men, because we talked about succession planning with the board. There were 3 young men like Jared and David O'Connor and Peter Reynolds, 3 wonderful young male directors that directed a lot at Hedgerow that were the likely next stage. And Jared, who'd acted all around the country, had settled down, had a family, started Curio Theater in Philadelphia, so he knew the whole artistic objective of it, but the administration was something he needed time with. So it wasn't like I just stepped down. I kind of gradually moved away. The hardest part, frankly, is not working with the kids. Because he's doing a wonderful job with the plays. And also, I now see he is bringing me back. I'm in the company. I'm in a play. I get to direct a little bit, and I get to start teaching again. So I feel we really did an amazing job, given that we're mother and son. Now, my mother and I ran it, and it's a little easier being mother and daughter, running the business together.
I don't know how I would be with my mom.
She was great at numbers. And I couldn't do anything unless I proved to her that this was a good idea. When we first started, because it had been going at a very rough pace because the place had burned down and all of that, and I wanted to raise money. And because from the theaters I was at, the audience is part of the people who love the place. So we sent out a letter, and my mother said, "You are just wasting stamps." And when the money came back in, she was delighted. And so that was a good thing. And the heartfelt support, this is what I was really good at, is connecting people. That's what I think is my real gift, is bringing people together. And now Jared has me as the head of our garden group. And I'm
And what is that?
Well, we've started gardens at the theater and then up at the house, because we have, being a repertory or company-based theater, we reside people up at the house. There's a farmhouse, and then I started a garden which will also serve the community from the front of the road to the back of the 2-acre property.
wow.
And now I'm starting to see people come aboard and want to volunteer. We're going to have
Oh, that's neat.
and it's how I see Hedgerow, and how one reason why I think new plays are so important. They are just like nature. They are the babies that are coming up. And you can't just do the classics. There have to be new, fresh ideas coming forward. One of the reasons I love this play we're about to do is it deals with women issues.
That's neat.
And it's said in such a clear, upbeat, fun way that, and now this women Me Too movement,
Oh, right, yes.
you see that all of a sudden women matter. And so the voices are coming out, and that's what's really exciting. And we used to do at least one new play every year. And so I'm pretty excited to be in this.
So Jane's a playwright, and we're going to introduce her in just a minute, but Jane is the playwright in residence. And what does that mean?
Sometimes you do a new play from somebody outside. But when you have a playwright in residence, that means they're working on their play, they're developing their art form with that ensemble. That's what's really been exciting about this. We started a year and a half ago to be reading it, and then we had a scripted reading, and then she went and worked more on it, and then we had another one for structure. And so you get that time, and the same people, except for the young man, the same people are in it. We've got a real 16-year-old this time instead of a 28-year-old reader of the piece. But the core company is all together. So it's like an ensemble, music ensemble. And so this play is like our baby now. So we're all celebrating with Jen.
Oh, that's exciting. And so that first, and I'm coming to the open, I'm pretty sure that my sweetie got his tickets for the opening night. He said he was going to get them, so I'm presuming that he did. And we'll be there for opening night, and I'm excited too. So what I'd like to do now is, it's probably good if we just go to a break, but when we come back, I'm going to introduce your playwright in residence.
You're in for a treat.
Jane McNeil, and I'm looking forward to it. So everybody stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute. You are listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Anne-Marie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Anne-Marie Kelly, and I am here with Jane A. McNeil, who is performing her first play is performing at Hedgerow Theater in just a couple weeks. So, Jane, I'm curious. This Dishman Springs is really an exciting thing, but first I want to find out, and I want my listeners to hear, when did you start writing?
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm happy
having
that
us.
you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. I thought about that a lot, and I guess it would be when I was a kid, about 9 or 10, I started writing fake news reports, and I had fallen in love with Gilda Radner on Saturday Night Live, and I wanted to be Gilda Radner. And so I would take national
You
enquiries.
just wanted to do the Rosanna.
I did.
know.
I loved her. She was so comfortable in her body, and she was so funny, and I love physical humor. So I thought I could do what she does on the news. And plus, Jane Curtin was,
yes. She was
on SNL, and you know there was a saying that my name's Jane, and there was a saying that some people thought was funny, and I didn't ever think that was funny because Dan Aykroyd would say it. I'm not going to
Yes.
say it on the air.
We don't need to say it, but
Jane,
yes.
So that was really the beginning, and I kept diaries. My mother gave me diaries, and I have an identical twin sister, and I think that was something she wanted us to do, was write about our experiences, and I was faithful to it. So I still have those diaries today.
It's interesting when I go back and look at some of my old diaries that I wrote when I was 18 and 20 and 30. It's really interesting how your perspective changes.
Oh yes, definitely.
And aren't you glad sometimes, sometimes you miss being that young, but then you remember some stuff and you're glad you're not.
The diary that had my teenage years, I destroyed.
Oh.
So I never got to go back and read that voice for a good reason, I think. I think that was not what I would want to read. But I loved reading the childhood ones up to the age of 12. And I loved kind of looking back on my years after being married and having kids. But most of the time, I don't really go back. I don't. I think it's just to get it out.
You know why I like to go back and I try and write at least one sentence a day. And the thing I like about it is that sometimes I'm moving so fast, I forget. I forget what I did. I forget what I was thinking. I forget what and I love remembering. It's like, oh yeah, it's because sometimes you almost second guess, what was I doing? And then you remember. And my cousin was telling me one time she did that she wrote down, it was just a normal day, and she did the dishes, and she did, all housey stuff. And she said, I was thinking that I didn't do anything all day. And when I went back and read it, I was like, I did a lot that day. So that's what I like to go back about.
Well, I'll actually tell you, recently, my husband and I went over to his cousin's house, and she had in her possession his grandmother's diary for a whole year in 1953. And she said, I don't want this. There's nothing really about me. I'm not even born yet. She said, do you want it? I go, are you kidding me?
Wow, I would have
that
taken
is
that. Yeah,
gold.
I like that, yes.
I read it in 2 days.
Wow.
And I loved it. It brought me into this world. And all of a sudden, I knew this lady, and I was so regretful that I hadn't seen it earlier, so that my mother-in-law and I could have talked about it.
Oh, that would have been
It was a
neat.
beautiful.
Yeah.
What's really weird about that diary, the first week, she's in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is where I'm from.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's weird.
And I thought that was so strange. And then about halfway through it, her brother is going to Buffalo, New York, and that's where my father was at that time, and my grandfather, and my grandmother too. They were there.
Wow.
So there were these really weird connections that were my parents and my future in-laws are missing each other. It's just really strange because my
Isn't that
father
funny?
was at Wharton.
Sometimes that happens, yeah.
At the same time, my mother-in-law's first husband was there. They missed each other by a minute. My aunt was at college. She missed my mother-in-law by a few years. It was just strange. We were
It's
moving
funny,
in
the
same...
energy is moving around.
I feel that way with Hedgerow. I feel like I was meant to go to Hedgerow at the age. Well, I'm not going to say my age. Later in life, because I was in media at 23.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
I
remember
moved
you saying
there
that.
from Boston after college. And the reason I did is because I had a close friend who said, move here, you're going to love everybody. You're going to meet people instantly. And they embraced me. And I had a great first few years there. And then I met my husband and moved, because that's how it happens. But life does come full circle, doesn't it?
It does. And it's interesting and you can't, when you're 20 or 25 or 30, 35, you can't really see how that happens. You can't
Oh,
really,
heavens no. I didn't believe
you
I
can't see
could
like
write.
little seeds from then come, blossom at 50, Not that you're 50.
It's okay. I am 50. I can say it. I'm proud of it.
So now, tell me what you write, Jane, because let me say it this way. What is your motivation or your muse, so to speak? I love finding those backstories. I like telling stories of women who overcome challenges. And, I want to help women have happier lives. So that's what motivates me.
Which I love.
What motivates you to write?
Initially, it was nonfiction, and I was writing vignettes about my life at a time that was really difficult, and I needed to get it out. And what I saw at the time, I was in a writing group in Rhinebeck, New York, and it was really for novices. It wasn't anything that required a prerequisite of an MFA or anything. And the class was 22 people, and they were responding. And I was surprised that they had an indifferent interpretation of what I was talking about. And I liked that. I liked that I was either helping some or I was engaging them in a conversation. So after that writing group, I said I should do this more. And I decided to go back to school at 40. And it was really a feat that I didn't think I could ever do, but it just was. I had had a business for 5 years. I didn't want to do that anymore. Something inside of me wanted to do something creative. I always had it in me, but I didn't listen to that voice. And I do think at 40 is our midlife opening. And where is midlife now, right? I think 50 is midlife. We get many midlives, right?
I think as you get older, midlife moves.
Yeah. And the nonfiction, for a while it was very satisfying, but I found that I just didn't like circling back to that me stuff. I just got sick of me in memoir. And I took a dramatic writing course with a wonderful local playwright named B.J. Burton. And B.J. just gave me permission to follow that. And all of a sudden, these stories, this dialogue was coming out of me. And it was based on real people, my grandmother and her friend. And I would hear it repeated in class, and I would just get so excited, more than I'd ever, in the 5 years of nonfiction writing, I had never felt this way. And I was so excited I'd go home and write immediately. And unlike the time where I would just sit there and, hedge a little bit, try and get into my writing ritual, it was so different because I never understand when the muse comes to you until I started writing dramatically.
Interesting.
And then the muse showed up, and suddenly these characters wanted to talk to each other, and they wanted to go places, and they wanted to interact and move, and it would come to me. It was exciting.
Oh, that is exciting.
That's how I discovered I enjoyed it so much more than flat writing. I think flat writing, I became one of those people who was a little bit stuck on the descriptive part of it, and I got stuck in structure. And I loved playwriting because I could just go anywhere I wanted, but I did have to follow a different structure, and that having to have the language be more fluid to me, because my teachers would say, you have too much dialogue. I'd say, okay, wait a minute, I like it when they're talking. Then I don't have to focus on what the room looks like and how to build up the next exchange. So for me, it was just a much more exciting way of being creative and basing it on historical characters, meaning my grandmother and her best friend and my uncle and my cousin. I just used that childhood of mine in a different way. And finally, it could be funny. And I could bring them to life again in the room. And I loved each and every one of them.
And
Even the one I made up a character. I took him from different parts of male leads that I liked. And I even made him messy. I made him messy because I like those kind of characters, the flawed ones, who we think in the beginning are just so perfect, and then all of a sudden, he got me. And I wanted something different with that. So
I'm always curious, and I ask writers this all the time. well, not all the time, but when I can think of it, I do. I want to know, do you have any special writing rituals? Like, do you have a time of day or
Yes.
a place or something like that that really helps juice the whole thing?
Yeah, it's funny. We had to, in grad school, we had to write a paper about this. And I thought, oh no, I'll probably give this up. I actually don't give it. I haven't given it up because I think writing is a ritual. I do believe in lighting a candle when I'm writing. And if I don't have a candle, I don't stop writing. It's just I love it when I light a fire. And I feel like I'm doing a
that's interesting. I
ritualistic
like that.
thing that I'm honoring something so primitive. I have the ability to light this fire and like tell the stories how tribes would have told stories. And all that mythology came out of it. So I think that's probably where I got that. I love a cup of tea when I'm writing.
Oh, me too.
God, I love tea.
Yeah, that's one.
Thank the Lord they came up with tea. I can't drink caffeinated beverages. They make me too wired and hyperactive. So the warm tea and the fire, and then I am for some reason an afternoon person. So I know my peak is going to be around 1 to 3 o'clock. I know I should get a minimum of 2 hours, and I don't always follow that. I think that's a lot. And I was at a conference once, and the person said, don't get into that whole craziness that you have to write every day. I do think there is a lot to be said about writing every day, but I think if you pressure yourself in one piece of writing, you're going to ruin it. You should really say when you're ready to go to it, you go to it and you dedicate the time. You honor that time. So for me, what I like to do is make sure if I'm not writing for my plays, I'm writing something in my journal.
Interesting. I'm thinking sometimes some of my best things have come while I'm on the beach or I'm out for a walk, and I talk it into my phone, and then I go back and put it to actual writing. So it depends on where you feel most creative. When I wrote Victorious Woman, I wrote most of that at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, and I would be not even coherent at that hour.
Yeah, I would roll out, literally, I would roll out of bed and go to my desk. I'd work until about 7 or 7:30, and then I would go back to bed. But it was different. It was different with Victory by Design and different again with 5 Year Marriage.
Well, and I will say I was in one spot with the play, and then with what I've written so far for rewrites and subsequent writing, I'm moving around. I'm not wanting to sit in one place. I don't know if that has something to do with...
Oh, you're different characters.
Maybe. Also, like, I get a little lonesome. I want my dogs around me. I want them to be I like having my lab underneath me sometimes, but then that can be a distraction. So it all depends on what's going on that day. What am I writing about? Is it something funny? Is it something serious? Or am I doing research? So it just depends on it. But I do move around now more than I did before.
Interesting. And you have a special place that you go to when you write, don't you?
Yeah, I have a studio. Originally, it was a spring house on our property, and it actually brought up spring water to our house that's a couple hundred years old. And we believe it was a schoolhouse, so it's really cool that
that is really neat.
It's had different lives too, and I feel like I've had different lives. I didn't start out as a writer. I started out just wanting to get a job and be able to survive, and I didn't know I was going to own a business at 30 that had nothing to do with writing, but I certainly could carve out a play out of that. But it seems like I've worn so many hats, and that being in this little studio has been so special. I'm so glad it's there. The oldest tree on the property is next to it. And
so you have a she shed.
I do have a she shed. I saw that commercial and went, is that what it's called?
A she shed.
I just call it my spring house. But I love that.
I know, I did too. It's like, oh yeah, I want a she shed.
Yeah. No,
of course,
I love it.
my homeowners association would probably not approve.
Well, I know my kids have their eye on it. They'd love to live out there, but I'm not going to let them. It's my place.
Jane, we need to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about Dishman Springs.
Yes.
So everybody stay close, hang in there with us, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Hi, this is Anne Marie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Anne Marie Kelly, and I'm here with Jane A. McNeil, and we're talking about her first play that's being performed at the Hedgerow Theater opening on September 14th. Jane, tell me something. What this play, Dishman Springs, what's it about?
Well, I based it on my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and her best friend. When I was 11 and 12, I went to stay with my grandmother for 2 summers, just for 2-week intervals, and she was so funny about her. My grandmother had lost one sister to a hospital error, and then another sister really she didn't communicate with, and so this woman, I think, was her surrogate sister. I never knew much about her, but she had such a great spirit, and she'd never been married. And my grandmother would take me over to her house, and she'd complain about her, like a sister. But when she got in the car, that woman's spirit would just take off. It was contagious. She was always in a good mood. She had like 10 dogs. And she lived in this enormous house, but she was so independent. And we were just taking her to the Holiday Inn for dinner. And she was just a riot. So the character in my play, who's kind of goofy, and I really embellished that personality, is based on her and their relationship. And what turned, through the writing the play, I did a little research on her. I had no idea this woman had a degree from Columbia.
Oh my! And very odd for her
For
age.
a Southern woman,
Yeah.
a spinster, had gone off to Columbia to get her master's in education. My grandmother had been the dietitian for 15 years at the high school, and that's why they were friends. And she was a lot older, and she would outlive my grandmother. So I just had an idea in my head. What would it be like having these two together? Almost like I was thinking of Laverne and Shirley. I was thinking of Carol Burnett and her, Ma.
It's so funny how you bring your own experience into what you're doing.
Yeah, and I love those shows. I grew up loving Carol Burnett, and with Harvey Korman and Mama and Eunice. And they were Southern, remember? And they were always fighting. But the fighting was about love. And when I think of my grandmother, she just had this way of looking at life I really got a kick out of. She loved telling creepy stories that would just keep us entranced. And she told me one that was really unsettling. It was about having a man underneath her bed.
Oh, my.
And finding him as a teenager. For years, I believed this was true. And I had turned to my uncle one day and said, can you believe your mother survived this incident? And he said, oh, honey, that's not true. And I knew that she had fabricated it. I thought that makes complete sense. But the way she told it was riveting. I made her tell me that story so many times. It scared me so much. Even today, I'll check underneath the bed because of my grandmother, even though it's not true.
So Jane, how does all that play into Dishman Springs?
Well, Dishman Springs, I wanted to write something funny. I wanted to make people laugh. I had been writing something pretty sad, and it was about these two women, and they were going to come together, and the reason would be that it would be a family issue, and this issue is her son is moving. And to my grandmother, if my uncle had come to her and said, I'm moving only a few hours away, I think that would have given her a heart attack or a stroke. They were so attached.
Wow.
And I thought of that premise and how Mary, her friend, they both, by the way, they were both named Mary. So I had to change my grandmother's name because that would have been too weird in a play. And I thought about my grandmother and her, Mary, being this childless person. And how would that go over with one fighting to keep the son and one just wanting to help her in any way? And I put them on this kind of what I call a Thelma and Louise adventure without the violence. And I thought of Dishman Springs, which is really, it was a pivotal point in my mother's life because she brought me back there. And I was a young girl going to this watering hole in southern Kentucky and terrified of snakes. And there was a swimming pool that went right up against the lake, and they told me to stay away from the lake because it had snakes in it. And I was scared. So that comes out in my character about that fearfulness of growing up in suburbia and then suddenly being exposed to the woods and the ruralness of it all. And but they go through this adventure together to prevent the sun from moving. And in the end, I think what you see is just, the main theme is family love and what we'll do to protect it.
Now, Pen, let me bring you back in for just a minute. There's a quote that you have from Jane's play that you thought was really pivotal to the whole point of her story. What was it?
This is Ida, her grandma. And it's just after she's done whatever they're going to do to try to get the sun to stay, to not go away. So I won't give that away. And little Gordy, who's the grandson, and that's a big reason she wants her son and grandson to stay. And she says, "You and your father have some notion of aging women. Well, today we showed 'em, didn't we, Mary?"
Aha. And people do have things about aging women, and we got to show them, huh?
That's right. We got to go for it.
I did not like the perception that these aging women were incompetent or complaining all day about their physical ailments. Every time I get a birthday card as I get older, it has something about my body, and that infuriates me. And it really was unconsciously left out because I did not grow up with a grandmother that complained about her body. So much so, she didn't tell anybody she was sick. And
Wow.
it would turn out she would die from cancer.
Wow.
Because she, as an old country woman, did not go to the doctor and thought she was fine. And she's probably one of those people, had she been told, she would have died sooner. So I have the impression of a grandmother that had to support her husband, who was 20 years older. Yeah.
Wow.
So when she was a dietitian at that high school, she was the breadwinner, and he was retired. And that just gave me inspiration to say, I'm going to make this voice strong, and she's not going to make any excuses for any of her behavior, and she's going to have a fun ride.
I like that. I'm looking forward to seeing it, Jane. So it's September 14th. That's just about a couple weeks away.
Yes.
So I presume you're in rehearsals now?
We're starting next week on
Okay.
Tuesday. So we're still in rewrites, even though most of them have been accomplished.
I could rewrite everything in all three of my
yeah.
books.
I laugh about Tennessee Williams and how much he rewrote and how he wouldn't stop. He just wouldn't stop. So even the people who finally got a hold of his papers had to just stick with one piece that was am I correct about this? I believe that he did it so much that it was frustrating to his autobiographers, I guess, and they would just take the one that was presented to the director and the producer at the time that it did well, because so often he wanted to go back and change things, and I thought he was perfect. So I'm never going to be Tennessee Williams.
Well, I remember a story about, I believe that it was Ernest Hemingway, and it's in a Farewell to Arms, that he went back and reread it, and he hated it.
Yeah, I heard that.
And he just wanted to rewrite, and it's like, but not a Farewell to Arms. How could that be?
No. I don't think Arthur Miller ever said that. I think he was happy.
But you're right. Yes.
Yeah, I think Arthur Miller
yes.
really liked what he wrote.
Jane, what do you want to see as the end result of Dishman Springs at Hedgerow?
I would love to see more new playwrights. I'd love to see more women come out and try to find their voice as I did. Hedgerow really gave me the permission to keep going. I didn't know where my play was going to go, and Penelope was the perfect mentor, surrogate mother, gift from the gods to say, let's keep investigating this. She would not let it go. And I kept saying, okay. And I was so fortunate to get her and some wonderful seasoned actors that really the stage now has kind of been taken over by 20-some-odd-year-olds or 30-year-olds. And these seasoned actors have so much to still give.
Mm-hmm.
I am so lucky that Penelope has this gift of gathering these incredible people, and they love her so much. They were willing to sit for readings, many, many readings, give me great advice, and I listened, and I paid close attention to what I was hearing. And as we talked about, these babies coming out of us and watching them become full grown, it really took almost 2 years for me to just say, oh my God, it's not mine anymore. It's theirs.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I guess you have to let it go for
You
for
have to let them
be
grow
able
to
do
grow
the
up.
job.
Yeah. And suddenly the Ida
Interesting.
I wrote was Penny. It was her Ida. And the Mary I wrote was Susie's. And the Almond I wrote was Harvey's.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
my Gordman became Robert. And the young man who came in last, he really did become Gordy. For the first time, I saw the kid, and it was great. We were so lucky to have him in the 11th hour. So I believe I could not have asked for a more perfect cast, and I think my mother had her hand in this, and maybe Penelope's grandmother. And maybe your mom will give us a great first night too.
Absolutely.
So I think there are angels that are around us, and
I'll
something
agree with you
magical
there.
happened with this. And if it speaks to people of a certain age, then I'm so proud of that. I'm so excited to be able to make them laugh.
Nice.
We need something to laugh at right now.
So how can my listeners get tickets?
They can go on the website, which is hedgerowtheater.org. They can also check me out on Instagram, although I'm under Appletree, or I don't know if they search Jane A. McNeil. I'm on Facebook. Penny's on Facebook, but the number to the Hedgerow Theater is 610-565-3211. 4211. I almost had that.
Well, but my listeners know that I always post things on the radio wrap-up, and the link to the tickets for Dishman Springs is on the radio wrap-up of
Great.
today's show.
That's true. We're going to give that to you.
Well, Jane A. McNeil and Penelope Reed, thank you so much for coming to Happy Hour today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
So much fun.
It was wonderful.
And to you, Victory Chicks, I'll be in reruns next week, and I hope you'll like the show I picked for you. It'll be a surprise. Thanks so much for coming to Happy Hour with me. You are the reason I do this, and I appreciate that you keep coming back. And as you know, for as much as we wish we can restart summer, sadly we can't. So here's a good end of summer quote for you. It's from the book Bel Canto, and its author Anne Patchett, who said, "To say it was a beautiful day would not begin to explain it. It was a day that when the end of summer interacts perfectly with the start of fall." So Victory Chicks and you guys, I hope you have a bunch of those days today, tomorrow, and always. Chenzan.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Anne-Marie Kelly.